And all pictures we can take during the break. So this was exciting because we've been talking of what's next, what kind of things that we need to take care of so that we understand pandemics better, because pandemics are not going to go away. And the next talk, and I have Professor Uday Desai here. Uday, can you just come here, and may I request Sharad to also be here. So we'll move from healthcare and pandemics to an area which is extremely important. It is about data science and how are we going to deal with all these changes that are happening through efficient use of data science. Who better could we have asked to deliver this keynote address than Professor Uday Desai? I'm not going to talk because it's already here, but one thing I want to tell you about, when Uday invited me to be on their incubator board at IIT Hyderabad, what I noticed was the kind of openness to new ideas and startups that he promoted. I think without the openness to look at new ideas, we will not be able to use data sciences in a revolution, in a very different way across sectors. So I want to hear from Professor Uday Desai his views on the same. Uday? Whatever you want to say. Sure.
If you can close it, I
can close this, yes. Okay, you can put it on top.
It's not that. I just put it on top. Okay. IKP for giving me this opportunity. A lot of known faces in the audience. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to talk to you during the break. See, this is a very vast topic, and of course, the way Deepanvita introduced me, it made it even more difficult for me. So, and initially, this is one of those unusual situations. Normally, whenever you are giving a talk, they're always running short of time. You have 10 minutes, they say, make it 8 minutes. Today morning, I get a mail from Deepanvita, you have 20 minutes now. So, as a professor, I guess we are used to stretching time, and I won't stretch it too much, but, trust me. So, as I said, this is a very vast topic. A lot of us know quite a bit about it, and we are aware. So one thing is that, to me, today data is all pervasive. Sitting right here, right now, all of us are generating data without us knowing it. Even when you do a minor WhatsApp, I'm sure some of you are doing it, or you're checking your email, sending an email out here. Even when you are browsing something, you may just suddenly look at Facebook or Instagram, or you take a picture and put it on Instagram, you are generating data. And data. So essentially, we are, living, walking, talking, moving around in a data cloud. Wherever you are, you could be in a toilet, you may be still generating data. Okay. So it is one of those very unusual situations that the world has not seen before, where data was just generated. And as per the International Data Corporation, for example, the forecast is that 65% of the world GDP is to be digitalized by 2022. We are almost at the end of 2022. Maybe the numbers may not be that much, maybe a little bit here or there. That gives an idea. Anything that is digital is data-driven. Okay, there is no way out of that particular part. Okay. Investments in digital transformations are going to total something like 6.8 trillion by 2023. I mean, this is a huge amount, in a sense, it's not that small. So data is the big thing that is going around. Digital trade is the fastest growing area of global trade over the past decade, growing by 5.4% a year on an average. And this is going to increase, by the way. Digital trade is, I'll say a little more about digital trade. I think this is one of the most important components. So my talk is not as much on healthcare and other things. I'm focusing broadly on digital data basically. Because it is all, doesn't matter whether you are dealing with economics data, whether you're dealing with healthcare data, the underlying situation is pretty much the same. So in a sense, we are all used to goods and services, right? I buy a laptop, I buy a cell phone, I buy a pen, touch and feel, okay? Services, I go there, I go to a shop, someone gives me a service. Again, there is a sense of touch and feel. This is a commodity, and I still use it deliberately as a word, as a commodity, okay, which we can trade, on which we can make money, on which we can be penalized, you can go to jail, okay? But you cannot touch and feel it, okay? It's one very unusual thing, okay? And this is going to increase, by the way. So we better get used to dealing with a commodity which you cannot touch and feel. None of your senses can essentially do that, except when you keep typing, something is happening, okay? Give me a second. Okay. Now, what is data science? It's a very broad subject. Today, practically every college, every university across the globe has a program on data science, BTech in data science, BTech in AI/ML, BTech in AI and data science in all permutation combination. And this is, there is one component which is not talked about very heavily in this when we talk of data science, and other things perhaps you are aware of it. Fundamentally, to me, data science depends on probability and statistics. Okay, this is something we don't teach people very, we teach 2 + 2 = 4. I differentiate x, I get 1, I integrate x, I get x squared by 2. Okay, but when you deal with data, it is not that definitive. You have to look at probabilistic derivatives, probabilistic integrals, and you go on with that. A little more complex, perhaps a lot more complex. Partly because we are not used to thinking in that manner. I am a big fan of the uncertainty principle of Heisenberg. Many of you must have heard about it. Okay. To me, everything in life involves probability. I come with a background of electrical engineering. I do a lot of probability. I have been teaching probability and statistics to EE students practically all my life. Okay. So in a sense, maybe that is my bias. Okay. But I believe that is very important, In a sense, there is a finite probability while crossing the road or while driving back, you may be knocked off, okay, however small, but we still do it, okay? We do it as if it's a definitive thing. I will go from point A to point B and nothing is going to happen to me. Most likely nothing will happen. There's always a finite chance. So this is a very complex thing, and this is what is used, because when data predictability comes in, it's not a definitive statement. Unfortunately, nobody talks that way. Ideal thing would have been that, yes, this is my data predictability with the probability of 0.95, 0.99, 0.97, etc. Okay. Okay. I mean, today we should get used to it. During the pandemic, when the virus, all kinds of things that came up, we had various vaccines coming up. They did talk about probability. It was there in newspapers. So I'm assuming that the notion of probability is becoming, all pervasive. If I had my way, I would start teaching probability theory from class 1. But then I don't have my way in this education system. I think this is the core for data science. All data science tools that you come across anywhere will involve this. There are definitive rule-based algorithms, if-then kind of thing, but they have their limitation. The trouble is, those are simple to analyze. They can go only so far, but you really want to do something complex, you have to get into probability theory. Another component when we talk about data science is artificial intelligence. We can talk about machine learning algorithms. To me, data science and AI are two sides of the same coin. If I have data, I can't do anything with it unless I have AI engines. And AI engines are useless unless I have data. All AI engines are trained based on data. By itself, it has no value, no merit. Okay? The two have to correlate together. They have to live together, interact together. Okay? So that's another big particular part, which often we tend to compartmentalize, saying that data science is one thing, or the AI is something else. The actual answer is no. Yes, many times when I do theoretical developments of AI algorithm, I may not necessarily focus that much on what data that is going to come in. The famous algorithm called back propagation algorithm, rather. Okay. It is an algorithm based on derivatives and integrals, etc., etc. Okay. But this is, and the point is that AI, I'm saying, is important because it will be used to make sense out of data. You're talking about hexabytes and hexabytes of data. I'll address that a little bit in a minute. Okay. And how do you make sense out of all of that? Okay. This is a hard problem. AI is there, and AI engines are based on probability theory. And that is something one has to kind of appreciate that. Okay. Now, let me focus, having said this very broad thing about what is data, perhaps many of you were aware of it, I was simply reinforcing it. What are the challenges? Some challenges we are all aware of it. Some perhaps they'll talk about maybe a bit different than what here. Security is something we are all aware of. We all talk about data security, data privacy, trust. There are bills in the parliament going on. Recently the bill was there. The bill was again withdrawn. Okay. So I think it's a very important thing. And by and large, I'll talk a little more after a few minutes on this topic. By and large, today, when people talk about data security, data privacy, trust, it is regulatory. Okay. I know I've talked to some people. I've been on panels, where people were there from the government, and they would always talk about regulation. I don't think regulation is the way to go about when you deal with data security, data privacy. Eventually, technology will break regulations. The simple example that I give, which all of us are familiar, even today there is a regulation, I think across all airports in India, perhaps over the world, you cannot take photographs at airports. When I was, many, many years ago, before cellular telephony became popular, by mistake I took a picture using my SLR camera, and the guy was about to confiscate the camera. Then after a lot of cajoling and convincing, he just took away the film. So I lost all my other photographs. Many of you are of my age, you'll remember those Kodachrome and Fujichrome films. Today, they can't stop you. They keep saying it. Recently I went to Srinagar. It's a defense airport. You're not supposed to take photographs, but everybody right from the time, even before the plane landed, was clicking, clicking, clicking. Now what do? You can't stop it because technology has made it so pervasive, so easy, it is impossible to regulate. Okay. So I think regulation has its limitations, and we should keep that in mind and not over-regulate things out here. So this is one part. Other part, and the big challenge, and this is in fact a harder challenge, security in my opinion can be technically solved, some regulations will be required, is what we call data bias. Now this is coming in, okay, and there are a lot of courses being offered, many people are talking about it. I'm part of this group called Global Partnership in AI, okay, and there are people looking at AI for fairness, AI for fair work, and bias is big. There are two kinds of biases, by the way. There's the data collection bias. Okay, this is a public talk, so I won't use certain vocabulary out here. But depending on who I am and where I come from, which economic strata I belong to, which country I belong to, which region I belong to in the world, the bias is going to come in when I do the data collection. Now, how do you take care of the particular bias? Because if the bias is there, your engine will not be able to remove that bias. Perhaps we have to look at AI engines and data analytic tools which can remove this particular data bias. The other part is even there are algorithmic biases, and this is something which is talked about a lot more. The colleagues that I have out here are emphasizing a lot more that AI algorithms also will be biased. And again, they will reflect, okay, the biases based on region, based on economic strata, etc., etc. Now, how do you handle this particular bias? It's a very sensitive topic, a word here or there, and you can get into trouble. Okay? So we need to kind of look at it. This is not a trivial problem. I would say this problem cannot be solved only by data scientists or AI people. You will need social scientists. And I don't know exactly, we'll have to shake hands together and then come up with a solution out here. Because they understand a lot more the kind of social biases that come into picture. While scientists by and large believe everything is objective, right? 2 + 2 = 4. There is no debate out there, no bias out there. But in data collections and AI algorithms, this is going to come in. We need to worry about that. The other part is data volume. It's like the Moore's principle that many of you might have heard in silicon. So here the point is that the amount of data doubles every 2 years. This is literally an exponential growth of data that we are facing out here today. Now, how do we handle this? Storage is a big issue. Access is a big issue. Communication is a big issue. Okay. We all want fast communication. You have 5G. Already people are talking about 6G. 5G is passé. India has already launched it. I think I was told in Gachibowli area you can get 5G using Airtel. I think Jio is coming right behind them, also coming up. So it is there. Okay. So now we're talking of 5G. The reason I'm saying 5G is recently I was there at the India Mobile Congress in Delhi when the Prime Minister launched 5G. And some of the people who had 5G access got speeds up to 400 Mbps on their cell phone. This I saw it. It could be because there were only in that whole Congress, maybe 10 people had access to it. That's why they got this fantastic speed. But even if you can get 40 to 50 Mbps or 30 Mbps, that's going to be much, much faster than what you currently get with your 4G. Okay. So that access problem is being tackled by communication engineers. Storage is a big problem. Storage costs money, storage costs energy. The carbon footprint generated by all the data servers and the data centers which are there, so-called the cloud, is quite phenomenal. Okay, I don't have the numbers with me. One can figure it out. So how are we going to handle this data volume? See, our hunger for data is phenomenal. Let's keep that in mind. All of us look for data, right? Constantly we are trying to look for something or the other. Now, how are we going to tackle this data volume, which is going to become that? The other part, which is little kind of quite interesting, again, not much emphasis, is data visualization. Fundamentally, when I do data analysis, it is not I who's going to look at the data. Most of the time, the data is going to be presented to people who are non-techies, right? You present it to the board of governors, and if you look at the boards across the globe, there are very few techies on the board, by the way. Almost all boards. Professor Mashelkar is one of the rare persons who's done several boards, okay? And he's a techie. But there are very few techies. Most of them are chartered accountants. Now, how do you present this complex scientific data with scientific data analytic tools to them? Data visualization is very big. And if you are, the best person, it is not the best visualization tool, in my opinion, was not developed by computer scientists or designers. There's a gentleman called Hans Rosling. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of it. He's a Swedish economist. Unfortunately, he's no more. He died rather young. He wrote his own tools for data visualization. You can go to the web and search for Hans Rosling, and you'll find some amazing data visualization. And I think that he has set a benchmark. In some sense, I think we should follow that benchmark. Okay. The other challenge, and this is much bigger, and I'll talk a little more about it as we go along, is data sharing. If I collect data and hang on to it, it has no meaning. Okay, it is useless. It is like I have money and I'm going to lock that money up and sit out there tight and do nothing with it. Unless I spend the money, use the money, invest the money, do something, it has value. Otherwise, it has no value. Now, how do we use data? Today, people are not sharing data. Countries are putting restrictions that, no, you cannot share data. In fact, recently, I was on a panel discussion on cross-border data flow. IKP has phenomenal amount of data. Okay? Hospitals have phenomenal amount of data. Medical practitioners and scientists have phenomenal amount of data. Even I have been quite, we did a lot of work on agriculture, okay, out here, in fact, at Agricultural Institute in Hyderabad. Okay. I was scared to share the data because I wanted to get value out of the data before others would get value out of it. Okay. Now, how do we create data sharing protocols? I know it's very surprising. I was talking to a gentleman from Shell company some years ago in Bangalore. Shell has a branch in Bangalore. And they said they cannot share the data generated by Shell in Bangalore with Shell company in Netherlands. He was from Netherlands. Okay. Now, how do you create that? This is a very, very difficult problem because it is not simply a problem dealing with scientists and engineers and etc. The country's policies come into picture, country's economics come into picture, country's security comes into picture. How are we going to create that? I'll talk a little bit. The last part, in terms of a challenge, I'm sure you can list many more. To me, this last thing is authentication. Suppose I'm developing, I teach course on artificial intelligence way back called ANN. This was way back in the late 90s, almost more than 20, 25 years ago. Okay. And now someone gives me the data. How do I know that data is authentic? Particularly right now, a lot of fake data is going around. You can call it fake news, fake data, etc. How do I know the data given to me by anybody? Normally I will go with the brand of the organization which is giving me. If the organization has a very good brand, it's good data. Okay. If I get data from MIT, I will assume it is good data. I will use it and say, aha, my algorithm works well. Why? Because I have validated my algorithm based on the data coming from MIT. Okay, or Stanford, or Berkeley, or whatever, or Oxford, whichever way. Princeton, for example, I'm just saying. So this is now, but there is a theory, and I think we are not doing this. It is called cross-validation. And loosely, I remember a long time ago reading Noam Chomsky, and I'm sure everybody has heard of Noam Chomsky. And what he used to say is that don't read one newspaper if you want to validate. You better read 10 to 20 newspapers every day and then cross-validate. And then extract the thing which is real. No, none of us do that. We read one item and say, boom, this is true. Okay. This cross-validation is a regular theory in statistics, by the way. It is being practiced. It is nothing new. It has been around for decades. I studied cross-validation when I was a student way back in the late 70s, doing my PhD at Hopkins. Okay. So it's a very old theory, but I don't think it has been exploited. To some extent, I saw some papers dealing with cross-validation of the algorithms. Okay. So this is a tricky problem, a scientific problem, and it has to be solved using science out here. Okay. So this is with regards to challenges, Okay, I won't review it, but anyway. Now, trust and security, what I feel, there is an old proverb in India called like kills like. If technology has created data, use technology to tackle this trust and security problem, rather than having regulations and other things. Okay. So what I would suggest is that, essentially, blockchain technology which exists, it has been around, now it is reasonably mature. I think that is something we need to exploit it. I mean, if I were back, I'm a retired professor, but if I were back an active professor guiding PhD students, I would certainly have a PhD student looking at blockchain technology for data security and data sharing. Once your security can share it. For example, we can do data tagging. You can do tagging for boxes. When you buy, say, a laptop, it comes in a box with an RFID tag. The old method is the barcode, but now I think most places use it. And literally you can track it, where it goes, using it, everything until you throw the box away. We can use blockchain for the same thing. We can use data tagging. So one way is when I share the data, I will know exactly where the data is going. I can keep tracking it, the way you track a box on your whatever, Google map or etc. Technically, it is possible. It has to be user-friendly, and a lot of challenges are there. But it can be done. We need to invest in doing that particular part. I think that is something, cryptocurrency. How many of us have been able to crack cryptocurrency? You can track cryptocurrency. You can't crack it, right? It's very secure. If blockchain can be used for cryptocurrency, why can't blockchain be used for general data? Could be medical data, could be agricultural data, could be healthcare data, could be economic data, any data that you can think of. And I think that is something which has to be there. Another point which I'd like to make, I don't understand it, but suddenly when I was making a presentation, not here, but in one of the previous talks, a bit outlandish, why don't we create a data exchange? You have a national stock exchange where we literally buy and sell goods and services, right? I buy shares of a particular company, I sell shares of a particular company, etc. Every day people go and by and large that system has been worked out. In India we have SEBI. SEBI will regulate and make sure that NSE doesn't go or BSE doesn't go kind of out of bounds. Is it not possible to create a data exchange? And I can monetize my data literally, very easily. Okay, a lot more thought is required. I'm just putting this as a thought out here. Now, many of the questions that I've talked about in security, and I won't spend too much time on this because I think I've exhausted more than 10 minutes, okay, or 12 minutes, whatever. Sorry about that. Okay. This is the old saying, never give a mic to an old professor. Okay, so, Web 3.0. Web 3.0 is very different from Web 2.0, and of course, 2.0 was very different from 1.0. I think Web 3.0 is going to be based on blockchain. It is going to be a decentralized web, okay? And my feeling is many of the security questions that I talked about, the trust question that I talked about, the privacy question I talked about, hopefully Web 3.0 will be able to address that. Maybe another year before Web 3.0 is launched, 2024. That's my rough estimate. Anyway, I could be wrong in this estimate. I think that will kind of tackle the problem. I'll leave it out here. I won't spend time on Web 3.0 since I have spent enough time out here. Thank you so much, and thank you for taking up all the time.
Thank you, Professor Desai, for a wonderful exposition of what's happening in this space. Now, since many people here are from the health, biology background, we clearly are seeing a golden moment in AI, right? I mean, AI is producing pictures, we are very close to self-driving cars, yes. At least with Tesla and so many other things that are happening, GPT and others. Now, in the case of biology, there's always been the use of data, right? There was in silico research, there are digital twins instead of animal liver and others. And now, people are talking in a big way about computational biology, synthetic biology. How does India become a mainstream, meaningful player in that area? Because we bring, multiple perspectives together. This is an opportunity for us. What are your thoughts about that?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's a great opportunity. We are lagging behind. Computational biology is, I think, very, very active if you go to some of the countries like US, UK, European countries. And I think, again, I used to tell people also, why did we come up with the vaccine, so quickly in the history of vaccines? I think you guys can correct me. I'm not a biologist. Okay, whatever vaccine we had for corona, okay, we came up within a much shorter time than normally vaccines take years and years. And part of the reason I was told, okay, I have not looked into it, investigated that, is use of AI. Okay, somehow they were able to look at various permutation combinations using AI tools and be able to rule out the certain permutations and combinations. You know, maybe true, maybe not true. You can kind of validate that or authenticate that. Okay. So I think the opportunity is great, and this is very sensitive data. Nobody wants to share biological data. So two things we need to do. One is, I think we need to start, you know, again, being a professor, I'm putting this as number one, but it could be even at a lower level. Start having courses on computational biology in practically every discipline. It may not hurt to have a brief computational biology exposure even in class 10th or something like that, 11th, 12th. And it's not that difficult. And I think this whole linear mode of education is a traditional mode. In my opinion, one can do a non-linear thing. So something which has to come, and it's not necessary that B has to follow A and C has to follow C, B, etc. You can mix it up. You can move things back and forth. So that is one part I would say. Second, I would say I'll take this opportunity to make a point that I make wherever I get a chance. Investments in R&D in competition. And I use the word investment very, very carefully. The reason is, in India, any R&D work that goes on, it is always looked upon as expenditure. Okay. Once you think of expenditure, all the rules and regulations of expenditure come on your head. This is exactly how the finance ministry looks at it. I would sort of recommend that the finance ministry should have, within the expenditure division, a division called investment. And R&D, whatever money spent on R&D should be looked upon as an investment. Until we do that, I think whatever is happening will continue.
Makes sense. May I ask a couple of other questions? So, you know, one area where there's a lot of work happening is scientific modeling, right? Where the gold standard used to be MATLAB. And finally, MATLAB has been defeated by Julia Computing, a product from India, you know, which started in Bangalore. They two co-founders, Viral Shah and Deepak Vinci, and they co-opted two MIT professors. And it has spread like wildfire. I mean, to the point that FAA's work on replacing the air traffic controller with the model is actually based on Julia. I mean, and it's got many, many seminal use cases. However, somehow the Indian adoption is missing. Right? I mean, they do a Julia Con and they compete, colleges compete. Obviously, in the early days, it was MIT. Then Stanford had 8 courses, so they moved it to Stanford. Then it became Georgia Tech because they had more courses than anybody else. Then it moved back to MIT, and every year, you know, universities are competing for how many courses they offer on Julia. In India, there's only MS Ramaiah in Bangalore that offers a course on Julia. So why is this the case? What is it that we need to do that in an area where we have a homegrown technology that is meaningful for our future, we are not able to get adoption to happen because a multinational company is not promoting it? What is your thought about that?
The last part is right. I think this is a story which happened in many instances. Unless it is validated by the West, you know, we will not adopt it. We take time to adopt for anything. Okay. There are lots of reasons, and I'm not necessarily the best person to analyze that particular statement. Okay, but I think that's what is happening. So, in fact, I tell many times our startups, and again, this is not me. This came once when Kanwal Rekhi made a statement. He says, you know, I will not invest in Indian startups. Many of you must have heard of Kanwal Rekhi. He's coming here for TIE Global, I think, a couple of months from now. So, and he said no, and I said I would rather, because I understand the system better, everything. And I want a product which is sold globally. Okay. And I think that is one of the core reasons out here, that, you know, now that MIT is doing it, now that Georgia Tech is doing it, I think slowly in India, the IITs and the IISCs will start adopting it, the triple ITs will get into the play. And slowly, you know, this is unfortunate, this is happening that way. But I think this is how the life cycle of many inventions and many things which go about it. You know, we can debate on this. This is a very big topic. But I'm happy that Julia, I mean, I'm not aware of Julia that much. I've not used it. Okay. But I'm really happy that Julia is being used so extensively and that courses are. And I was glad, I think Deepak Vinci, I think I know him. He's probably the elder.
He was in IBM.
IBM or
research,
maybe,
yeah.
yeah. So I think, so
Yeah.
this is something, again, this goes back to what I was saying, not just data bias, which comes from my own bias. So this is again related to the biases that I talked about.
So this validation, the white man validation, is also playing out in another area in data. So India has been pioneering, as you pointed out, it's very difficult to regulate data by just public policy because it doesn't work, right? So you need a combination of public technology and public policy to come together in a jugalbandi, right, to make that happen. And India has pioneered this techno-legal regulation of data, especially for in-country data sharing through account aggregator, which is now 1.1 billion bank accounts, growing at 60% month on month. How do we now build a community of techno-legal experts so that we can take this, demonstrated example here in India, which was, by the way, part of the previous law, so I'm expecting will be part of the upcoming revision of the law as well. And at least socialize it with the rest of the world. So how do we create experts? And how do we apply this to this huge challenge of health? Because its applicability in health is very, very high. Health data is so sensitive. So any suggestions on what can we do to overcome and make this techno-legal regulation of data sharing that India has experimented at scale, help it go mainstream, not just in India, but in other parts of the world?
No, I think this techno-legal thing is very, very crucial in today's time because everything is driven by technology. I mean, you ask, from the time you get up in the morning till you go to bed, even your bed has certain technology in it nowadays when you buy it. So it's like the impact of technology is very high. So my feeling is you should get some people from Nalsar. Okay, I'm saying Nalsar, it could be even the National Law School in Bangalore. Simply we are in Hyderabad, that's why I'm saying Nalsar. And so the technical expert, they need to sit together. I think the two have to, as you said, two have to kind of come together, okay, and work on this particular part. Currently, it is like both are working in isolation and then we keep criticizing each other.
Yeah.
But this is very, very important. Yeah.
Do we have time for any audience questions or no?
We can
Right.
take a couple of them. No, I think.
Really? Can we take one from a young,
there is something.
somebody who's, really under 30? Can we request you
As
to
a
do that?
professor, if students don't ask questions, I feel very uncomfortable. I think there was a gentleman here. You can just shout.
Yeah.
Is regarding the statement that you had made. I was not very clear on that. The blockchain technology, the data can be tagged to it, is what you had mentioned.
I'm unable to hear. Blockchain technology.
So the blockchain technology, the data can be tagged to it. So I was just wondering, does it not create any kind of a security issue with its tagged? Because the way the blockchain technology is being used, it gives presently a sense of security. Because, as I understand, I may be a little immature on that because I'm a lawyer, not a technology person, though I deal with technology though. But to say that, data being tagged on blockchain, will it create any kind of a security issue?
Frankly, no. I think, see, first of all, we have a techno-legal expert right here. Thank you. What I would say is that, not really. See, in some sense, you're more, it's like saying, I'm more secure in a crowd. Okay, if you're standing at VT station in Bombay, I don't know if anybody has visited VT station during rush hour in Bombay, you will know what a crowd is. Okay, this is not a crowd. Okay, so, there is a certain sense of security. Things will not happen to you. Of course, things can happen. As I said, everything is probabilistic. So, I think this is how much do you decentralize the whole amount of information? So no one person knows everything. And in some sense, to know everything, everybody has to come together. Okay, so that is the kind of basic philosophy behind creating security. Having said that, any security method you create, at one point it will be broken. See, currently for bank transactions, it started with RSA, the public-private key. I think 256-bit RSA was broken. Now it is 512-bit, and soon maybe we'll go to 1024-bit. We have the power to process it, to decode it, etc. So I think, but I like this, I'm a big believer in what they call in computer science, self-organizing decentralized systems. I don't like highly regulated, bottom-up, control kind of a system out here. But this systems to me, yeah, and essentially blockchain falls in that particular category. It's a highly decentralized system. It is not self-regulated, unfortunately, but is highly decentralized. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that answers.
Yeah.
That would invariably mean that we would be requiring a lot of awareness amongst the industry
Awareness and
peoples.
computing power. You know, I was told to create one Bitcoin. It takes probably weeks to do that.
Especially now.
Yeah.
So on that note, I know we are running short of time, and we would encourage you to catch
just
Professor
one more
Desai
statement
in the break, please, if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
So I'll take this word back to National Law School, also to Nalsar,
Yeah.
because I am graduate of National Law School of 2000.
Yeah, Rahul Mathan, and there are
Yes,
many people from National Law School who are very
Yeah.
active. Rahul Mathan, the first batch is there. Pramod Rao, who's now in SEBI. Second batch is there. Srijani. So there are many people we should talk offline
Yes,
about
yes,
that.
of
Yeah.
course, of
All right,
course.
thanks.